They said the system was too big to fail. But in just 1 week, giants collapsed. Millions lost homes, jobs, and hope. And it all started with a lie. It's me. And in this video, we are going to find out how the entire world got destroyed. No, not that world. This world in 2008, in under a week, the entire world watched in horror as one of the largest financial crises in history unfolded before their eyes. Stock markets crashed. Economies crumbled, and people began to lose faith in the very foundations of the global financial system. But what really happened during that fateful week in 2008, and how did it impact our world today? Let's find out. On Monday, September 15, 2008, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke, gave a speech to the nation assuring everyone that the worst was over. Just days after the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers, the second largest investment bank in America, he told the country there was no systemic risk to the broader financial system. But many knew that this was far from the truth. A week earlier, everything had been fine. Markets were soaring to new heights, and investors were feeling pretty rich. But then suddenly, everything changed. Lehman Brothers, one of the biggest players in the game, had filed for bankruptcy and sent shockwaves throughout the entire financial system. People began to panic, and the markets started to tank. But Bernanke told everyone to stay calm, saying that the Fed would do whatever it took to restore order to the markets. However, deep down, even he knew that this might not be enough. On Tuesday, September 16th, the Dow Jones Industrial Average plummeted by 4.7%, its largest one-day drop since August. Investors were beginning to lose faith in the markets and were pulling out their money in droves. But Bernanke and the Fed were determined to restore order. They announced a plan to buy mortgage-backed securities in an effort to get the housing market moving again. This calmed the markets slightly, but many investors were still nervous. They had seen too much volatility in the markets to feel comfortable. Wednesday, September 17th, was when things really started to unravel. On this day, the largest bankruptcy in U.S. history was announced. The bankruptcy of the giant investment bank Lehman Brothers. The news sent shockwaves throughout the entire financial industry and caused the stock market to plummet. People began to panic and sell their investments, which caused the market to fall even further. The economy was beginning to melt down around them, and people didn't know what to do next. As the week wore on, things went from bad to worse. On Thursday, September 18th, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell another 4.9%. The markets were now officially in a freefall. People were losing their jobs, their homes, and their life savings. It seemed like the entire economy was about to collapse. But what caused this economic meltdown in the first place? It all started with the housing bubble. In the early 2000s, the housing market began to boom. Prices began to rise rapidly, and it seemed like everyone was getting rich. But the bubble was bound to burst, and when it did, it caused the entire economy to crash. The burst of the housing bubble led to a wave of foreclosures. As home prices began to fall, many homeowners found themselves underwater on their mortgages. They owed more on their homes than they were worth. This led to a wave of foreclosures as banks began to take back homes from borrowers who could no longer afford to make their payments. As more and more people lost their homes, the economy began to tank. People were losing their jobs and their life savings. It seemed like the entire world was falling apart. But the truth is, this wasn't a crash. It was a reckoning for those who caused this crisis and those who profited from it. And while the world was quick to blame the subprime borrowers, the truth is, this crisis was caused by a perfect storm of greed, negligence, and outright fraud. From the banks that issued mortgages to the investors who bought them, everyone was looking for a way to make a quick buck. But in the end, it was the borrowers who paid the price. So, what can we learn from this? That when we let greed and negligence take over, we all suffer the consequences. The 2008 global financial crisis was a wake-up call for all of us. It showed us that no matter how big or powerful a company is, if they're built on a foundation of lies, they will eventually collapse. But it also showed us the power of hope. In the darkest days of the crisis, when it seemed like the world was falling apart, people still had hope. Hope that things would get better. Hope that they would pull through. And that's something we can all take away from this crisis. No matter how difficult things may seem, never give up hope. Thanks for watching.